The scar across Lily Bennett's face had been carved by a rattlesnake bite when she was 14, leaving twisted purple tissue that pulled the left corner of her mouth downward in a permanent half-frown. And ever since that summer day in 1867, the women of Fort Bowie, Arizona, had whispered that no decent man would ever look past such disfigurement to see the woman beneath. Now, at 23 years old in the scorching August of 1876, Lily had almost convinced herself they were right as she stood behind the counter of her father's general store, watching the latest batch of young brides step off the afternoon stage with their pretty, unblemished faces and hopeful eyes. The desert heat shimmered through the store's front windows, distorting the view of the dusty Main Street where soldiers from the nearby fort mingled with ranchers, miners, and the occasional drifter passing through on their way to somewhere better. Lily's father, Thomas Bennett, had died 3 months prior, leaving her the store and a mountain of debt that kept growing no matter how many tins of beans or pounds of flour she sold. The bank manager, Howard Pierce, had made it abundantly clear that a woman alone could not possibly manage such an enterprise, and that she should consider marriage to someone capable of taking over the business before she lost everything. "Perhaps my nephew Richard would be suitable," Pierce had suggested with an oily smile that made Lily's stomach turn. "He wouldn't mind the scar, I'm sure. He's desperate enough for a stake of his own." Lily had shown him the door without answering, but his words had burrowed under her skin like a cactus spine. Desperate enough. That was what it would take for any man to want her, and she would rather lose the store than settle for someone who saw her as a last resort. The bell above the door chimed, pulling Lily from her thoughts. She expected another curious townsperson coming to gawk at the new arrivals, but instead, a tall figure ducked through the doorway, and she recognized Garrett Jenkins, the quiet cowboy who worked at the Double R Ranch about 5 miles outside town. He came in every 2 weeks like clockwork to buy supplies, always paid in cash, and never said more than necessary. Lily had waited on him dozens of times over the past year, and she could count on one hand the number of full sentences he had spoken to her. "Afternoon," Garrett said, his voice low and rough as gravel. He removed his dusty hat, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at his temples despite being cropped short. His face was tanned from long days under the Arizona sun, with lines at the corners of his gray eyes that suggested he was somewhere in his late 20s. He was not handsome in the conventional sense, his features too angular and weathered for that, but there was something solid and dependable about him that Lily had always noticed. "Good afternoon, Mr. Jenkins," Lily replied, keeping her scarred side angled slightly away from him out of habit. "The usual supplies." "Yes, madam, and I need to order some extra rope and leather tack. Boss is expanding the herd." Lily pulled out her order book and pencil. "How much rope and what kind of tack?" As Garrett listed his requirements, Lily wrote everything down in her careful script. She was aware of his eyes on her, and she wondered if he was staring at the scar like so many others did. Most people tried to be subtle about it, but she had learned to recognize that particular quality of attention, the way their gaze would fix on the left side of her face and linger there with fascination or revulsion or pity. "That should do it," Garrett said when he finished. "When can you have it ready?" 3 days. "The rope I have in stock, but I will need to order the tack from Tucson." "Fair enough." He paused, and Lily looked up from her book to find him studying her face. Her hand automatically wanted to rise and cover the scar, but she forced it to remain at her side. Let him look. Everyone else did. But then Garrett said something unexpected. "You've got good handwriting. Real clear and neat." Lily blinked, caught off guard. "Thank you." "My writing looks like chicken scratches. Always wished I could write proper like that." He turned his hat in his hands, and Lily realized with surprise that he seemed nervous. "Listen, Miss Bennett, I heard about your father. I'm real sorry. He was a good man, always treated folks fair." "Thank you," Lily said again, softer this time. "That's kind of you to say. If you need any heavy lifting done around the store or anything that requires some muscle, you just let me know. I come into town regular enough, and I don't mind lending a hand." The offer surprised her so much that Lily forgot to angle her face away. "That's very generous, Mr. Jenkins, but I couldn't ask you to work for free. Wouldn't be work. Would be helping a neighbor." His gray eyes met hers directly, without sliding away to her scar, without that telltale flicker of discomfort. "That's what folks ought to do." Before Lily could respond, the door burst open with enough force to make the bell clang violently. Martha Simmons, the blacksmith's wife and the biggest gossip in Fort Bowie, swept in with her usual air of self-importance. Her sharp eyes immediately latched onto Garrett, then slid to Lily with barely concealed disapproval. "Good afternoon, Lily dear," Martha said in a tone that was anything but warm. "I need 3 yards of calico, the blue pattern, and do hurry, I have so much to do today." She turned to Garrett with a calculating smile. "Mr. Jenkins, how nice to see you. Have you met any of the lovely young ladies who arrived today? Fresh from St. Louis, every one of them prettier than the last. I'm sure they'll all be married within the month." Lily felt her jaw tighten as she moved to retrieve the calico. She knew exactly what Martha was doing, rubbing salt in the wound as she always did. "Can't say I have," Garrett replied in his usual economical way. "Oh, you simply must attend the dance on Saturday. I'm certain you'll find someone to your liking. A hard-working man like yourself deserves a proper wife, don't you think? I reckon a man deserves whatever he earns, same as anyone else." Martha's smile faltered slightly at his cryptic response, but she pressed on. "Well, naturally. I only meant that there are so many eligible young women now. You have your pick. No reason to settle for less than the best." Lily returned with the fabric and began measuring it out on the counter, her hands steady despite the anger simmering in her chest. She had endured Martha's barbs for years, but they never quite stopped stinging. "Seems to me the best isn't always the prettiest," Garrett said quietly. "A man looking for a wife ought to consider what's inside, not just what's on the surface." The words hung in the air for a moment. Martha's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. Lily's hands stilled on the fabric, and she glanced up at Garrett in surprise. He was not looking at Martha. He was looking directly at Lily, his expression serious and sincere. "Well, I never," Martha huffed. "That's 3 yards exactly, Lily. Put it on my account." She snatched up the fabric and marched toward the door, pausing only to deliver one final poisonous shot. Some people ought to accept their lot in life instead of reaching for things they can never have. The door slammed behind her. The silence that followed felt thick and suffocating. Lily's face burned with humiliation, and she busied herself with closing the fabric drawer, blinking rapidly to keep the tears at bay. "Don't listen to her," Garrett said. "She's got a mean streak wider than the Rio Grande. She's only saying what everyone thinks." The words came out more bitter than Lily intended. "Not everyone." Lily looked at him then, really looked at him. Garrett Jenkins stood in the dusty shaft of sunlight streaming through the window, his hat in his hands and his gray eyes steady on her face. There was no pity there, no revulsion, just a quiet certainty that made something in her chest twist painfully. "I'll have your order ready in 3 days," she said, because she did not know what else to say. "Much obliged." Garrett settled his hat back on his head and moved toward the door. He paused with his hand on the handle and glanced back. "That offer stands, Miss Bennett. You need help, you ask." Then he was gone, leaving Lily alone with the weight of his words and the strange, unfamiliar flutter of hope that she did not dare trust. The next 3 days passed in a blur of inventory, customers, and paperwork. Lily worked from dawn until well past dark, trying to keep the store running while managing the complicated mess of her father's finances. The debt was worse than she had initially thought, and Pierce's nephew Richard had started showing up at closing time, offering to walk her home and making pointed comments about how much easier things would be if she had a man to handle the business side of things. "You're good with customers, Lily," Richard said on Wednesday evening as she firmly ushered him toward the door. "But you need someone who understands numbers and negotiations. Let me help you." "I understand numbers perfectly well, Richard. I've been keeping these books since I was 16. But dealing with suppliers, handling difficult customers, collecting on debts, that's man's work. You shouldn't have to trouble yourself with such things." Lily bit back the sharp retort on her tongue and simply opened the door wider. "Good night, Richard." He left with obvious reluctance, and Lily locked the door behind him with more force than necessary. She leaned against it, exhaustion washing over her in waves. Her father had taught her every aspect of running the store, from inventory management to price negotiation. She was perfectly capable of handling the business. The problem was that suppliers and customers did not want to deal with a woman, especially one marked as unmarriageable. They wanted a man's signature on contracts, a man's word on agreements. Friday afternoon arrived with Garrett's order from Tucson. Lily unpacked the leather tack and inspected it carefully, making sure everything met the specifications. She was coiling the rope when the bell chimed and Garrett walked in, right on schedule. "Afternoon, Miss Bennett." "Good afternoon, Mr. Jenkins. Your order is ready." She gestured to the items laid out on the counter. "I checked everything myself. The quality is good." Garrett examined the tack with an expert eye, testing the stitching and the weight of the leather. "This is fine work. What do I owe you?" Lily consulted her ledger and named the price. Garrett counted out the bills without hesitation, then added an extra $1. "That's too much," Lily said, trying to hand back the extra money. "Consider it a deposit." "A deposit for what?" "Future services." "Like I said, you need help with anything, you let me know." Lily shook her head. "Mr. Jenkins, I appreciate the offer, but I cannot accept charity. It's not charity. It's neighborly." He pushed the $1 back across the counter. "And maybe sometime you could call me Garrett instead of Mr. Jenkins. Makes me feel like my grandfather." Despite herself, Lily felt a small smile tug at her mouth. "Only if you call me Lily instead of Miss Bennett. Deal." Garrett gathered up his purchases, then paused. "You going to the dance tomorrow night?" The question caught her off guard. "No, I don't attend dances." "Why not?" "Because no one wants to dance with the scarred woman. Because standing on the sidelines watching everyone else enjoy themselves is more painful than staying home." "I'm not much for dancing." Garrett studied her for a long moment. "Shame. I was hoping you might save me a dance." Lily's heart did a strange little skip. "You're teasing me." "No, madam, I'm not." His expression was completely serious. "But I understand if you'd rather not, just thought I'd ask." He tipped his hat to her and walked out, leaving Lily staring after him in confusion. Was he sincere? Or was this some elaborate joke that would end with her humiliation at the dance hall? She had learned long ago not to trust offers that seemed too good to be true. That evening, as Lily was closing up the store, her friend Elena Rodriguez stopped by. Elena was the daughter of a Mexican rancher whose family had lived in Arizona long before it became American territory. She was beautiful, with long black hair and warm brown eyes, and she had never treated Lily any differently because of her scar. "You look troubled," Elena observed, settling onto the stool behind the counter while Lily counted the day's receipts. "What's wrong?" Lily hesitated, then told her about Garrett's invitation to the dance. Alina listened with growing excitement. "But that's wonderful. Garrett Jenkins is a good man. Everyone at the Double R speaks highly of him." "Alina, he's probably just being polite, or worse, it's some kind of joke." "Why would it be a joke? Maybe he genuinely likes you." Lily touched her scarred cheek unconsciously. "Men like him don't like women like me." Alina reached across the counter and grasped Lily's hand. "You are smart, kind, strong, and beautiful. That scar doesn't change any of that." "Maybe Garrett sees what the rest of this town is too blind to notice. Or maybe he feels sorry for me. There's only one way to find out. Go to the dance." Lily shook her head. "I can't. What if he doesn't show up? What if he dances with all those pretty new girls instead? I can't bear the humiliation. What if he meant every word, and you miss your chance because you're too afraid to take it?" Alina squeezed her hand. "You've spent 9 years hiding because of what people say. Don't let them steal one more moment of your life." The words resonated in Lily's chest, echoing through all the lonely years since the snake bite. How many opportunities had she let slip by because she was afraid? How many times had she made herself small and invisible to avoid rejection? "I don't even have a proper dress," Lily said weakly. Alina's face lit up. "Leave that to me." The next evening, Lily stood in her small room above the store, hardly recognizing her own reflection. Alina had worked magic, altering one of her own dresses to fit Lily's taller, leaner frame. The fabric was a deep green that brought out the amber flecks in Lily's brown eyes, and the neckline was modest but flattering. Alina had also swept Lily's honey-colored hair up into an elegant arrangement that softened the scar rather than trying to hide it. "You look beautiful," Alina said, standing behind her with a satisfied smile. Lily touched the scar gently. It was still there, still visible, but somehow it seemed less monstrous in this light. Or perhaps she was just seeing herself through different eyes. "What if this is a mistake?" Lily whispered. "Then you'll survive it just like you've survived everything else, but I don't think it is." Alina handed her a shawl. "Now go before you lose your courage." The walk to the dance hall felt both endless and far too short. Lily could hear the music from a block away, fiddles and a piano creating lively melodies that spilled out into the warm night air. Couples were already dancing when she arrived, swirling around the floor in a kaleidoscope of color and motion. Lily hesitated in the doorway, suddenly certain this was a terrible idea. Then she saw him. Garrett stood against the far wall, looking uncomfortable in a clean white shirt and black vest. He was scanning the crowd, and when his eyes found her, his whole face changed. He crossed the room with long strides, moving past the St. Louis girls in their fancy dresses without a glance. "You came," he said, and the relief in his voice was unmistakable. "You sound surprised." "I was afraid you wouldn't." He extended his hand. "Would you dance with me, Lily?" She placed her hand in his, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his fingers. "I should warn you, I'm not very good at this." "That makes 2 of us." He led her onto the floor as a waltz began. Garrett's arm settled around her waist, proper but firm, and they began to move. He was right about not being an expert dancer, but he was steady, and he held her with a confidence that made it easy to follow. Lily was intensely aware of how close they were, of the warmth of his hand on her back, of the way he was looking at her like she was the only person in the room. "That dress is real pretty," Garrett said. "The color suits you." "Thank you. Alina lent it to me." "Alina's got good taste, but she didn't make you beautiful. You were already that." Lily's breath caught. "Garrett, you don't have to say things like that." "I know I don't have to. I want to." His gray eyes were serious. "Can I tell you something?" "Yes." "I've been coming to your store for over a year now. Every time I tried to work up the courage to really talk to you, but I could never figure out what to say. I'm not good with words like some men. But the truth is, I've noticed you for a long time, Lily Bennett. The way you're patient with difficult customers. The way you always make sure to order exactly what folks need. The way you smile at children when they come in with their pennies to buy candy. I've noticed all of it. Why didn't you say something before? Didn't think I had anything to offer a woman like you. I'm just a ranch hand, no land of my own, no prospects beyond my wages. But then your father passed, and I saw how folks started circling like vultures, and I thought maybe I should at least try. The worst you could do is say no. The music swelled around them, and Lily felt tears prick at her eyes. Everyone told me I'd never find someone who could look past this. She touched her scarred cheek with her free hand. Garrett's grip on her waist tightened slightly. I'm not looking past anything. I'm looking right at you, seeing all of you, and I like what I see. Over Garrett's shoulder, Lily could see Martha Simmons staring at them with her mouth hanging open. Richard Pierce was glowering from across the room. The new girls from St. Louis were whispering behind their hands. Let them talk, let them stare. For the first time in 9 years, Lily did not care. I'd like to get to know you better, Lily said quietly. If you mean what you're saying. I mean every word. Garrett smiled, a rare full smile that transformed his weathered face. How about I take you to dinner tomorrow evening? Nothing fancy, just the restaurant at the hotel. I'd like that very much. They danced 3 more dances, and then Garrett walked her home through the quiet streets. He did not try to kiss her, just squeezed her hand gently before saying goodnight. Lily floated up the stairs to her room, feeling lighter than she had in years. Over the following weeks, Garrett courted her properly. He took her to dinner every Sunday after church. He brought her small gifts, wildflowers picked from the desert, a smooth turquoise stone he had found by the creek. He helped her reorganize the stockroom, lifting heavy crates and building new shelves. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, and Lily discovered that, beneath his quiet exterior, Garrett had a dry sense of humor and a thoughtful intelligence that delighted her. He also made it clear to anyone watching that he was courting Lily exclusively. When the St. Louis girls tried to flirt with him at the Mercantile, he was polite but distant. When Richard Pierce made a snide comment about Garrett's intentions, Garrett looked him in the eye and said, "My intentions are to court Miss Bennett proper and see where it leads." "You got a problem with that?" Richard did not answer, but he stopped coming around the store. As summer faded into fall, Lily felt herself falling in love with Garrett Jenkins. It was not the wild, passionate love of dime novels. It was steadier than that, deeper. It was the way he listened when she talked about her worries over the store's finances. It was how he never once suggested she needed a man to solve her problems, but instead helped her find solutions herself. It was the quiet strength in his presence, the knowledge that he would be there when she needed him. One October evening, as they sat on the bench outside the store watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of orange and pink, Garrett said, "I've been saving my wages for 5 years now. Got enough put by to make a down payment on some land." "That's wonderful, Garrett. Where are you thinking?" "There's a section about 3 miles from here, near the river. Good grazing, enough water for livestock and crops. I could build a house there, start my own ranch." It wouldn't be much at first, but it could grow. Lily smiled, happy for him even as her heart sank slightly. If Garrett moved 3 miles away, she would see him less often. "You'll make a success of it, I know you will." "That depends." "On what?" Garrett turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "On whether you'd be willing to share it with me." Lily's heart began to pound. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you, Lily Bennett. I love your strength and your kindness and your sharp mind." I love the way you stand up for yourself even when folks try to push you down. I love how you see the good in people even after they've given you every reason not to. I want to marry you if you'll have me. I want to build that house with you, fill it with a family, grow old watching the sunset together just like this. Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks. The whole town said I'd never find love. The whole town was wrong. Garrett reached up and gently cupped her scarred cheek in his palm. This doesn't make you less beautiful. Nothing could. So what do you say? Will you marry me? Yes, Lily whispered. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Garrett kissed her then, gentle and sweet, and Lily felt the last of her walls crumble. She had spent so long believing the cruel words people whispered, so long thinking she was not worthy of love. But Garrett's devotion had proven them all wrong. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church at Fort Bowie. Alina stood as Lily's witness, and Tom Fletcher, Garrett's friend from the Double R Ranch, stood for Garrett. Martha Simmons attended, though she looked like she had swallowed something sour. Richard Pierce did not come, but Howard Pierce did, his calculating eyes taking note of the legal union. After the ceremony, Garrett carried Lily over the threshold of the small room where he had been boarding, which would serve as their temporary home until the house was built. That night, as Lily lay in her husband's arms, she whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." "Thank you for letting me," Garrett replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, Lily Jenkins." The name still felt new and wonderful on her tongue. Lily Jenkins. A woman beloved, a woman chosen, a woman whose scars had not defined her destiny after all. The following months were busy and full of purpose. Garrett continued working at the Double R Ranch while using every spare hour to prepare their land. Lily ran the store with renewed energy, her confidence bolstered by Garrett's unwavering support. When suppliers questioned her decisions, she stood firm. When customers tried to take advantage, she held her ground. The store's profits began to slowly climb. In February, Pierce came to inform her that he was calling in Thomas Bennett's loans. "Nothing personal, my dear, but business is business. You have 60 days to pay the full amount or the bank will seize the store." Lily's stomach dropped. The amount was staggering, more than she could possibly raise in 2 months. But she lifted her chin and met Pierce's eyes without flinching. "I'll have your money." When Garrett came home that evening and she told him about Pierce's ultimatum, he was furious. "He's trying to force you out so he can give the store to Richard. It's revenge because you chose me instead." "What are we going to do? Even with both our savings, we're short by $300. Garrett paced the small room, his jaw tight with frustration. Then he stopped. "I'll sell my land." "No, that's your dream, our future. You're my future, Lily. The store is your inheritance from your father. We're not losing it." Lily shook her head. "There has to be another way." Over the next week, they explored every option. Lily sold her mother's pearl necklace, the only valuable thing she owned. Garrett took extra work breaking horses for nearby ranchers. Alina and Tom helped spread the word that Lily needed to collect on outstanding store debts, and several customers came in to settle their accounts. It still was not enough. Then, 10 days before the deadline, something unexpected happened. A tall, distinguished man in expensive clothes walked into the store. "Mrs. Jenkins, I'm Samuel Hartwell from the Arizona Territorial Investment Company. I understand you might be in need of financial assistance." Lily regarded him warily. "What kind of assistance?" "I've been researching business opportunities in this region, and your store has caught my attention. Your inventory management is excellent, your customer relations are strong, and your profit margins have been steadily improving. I'd like to offer you an investment." "I don't understand." Hartwell pulled out a leather folder. "I'll provide the capital you need to pay off the bank, plus additional funds to expand your inventory. In return, I'll take a 30% share of the profits for the next 5 years. After that, the partnership dissolves and you own everything outright." Lily's hands trembled as she looked at the papers. "Why would you do this?" "Because I believe in investing in capable people, Mrs. Jenkins. Your gender doesn't concern me. Your competence does, and from what I've seen, you're very competent indeed." She wanted to accept immediately, but she had learned to be cautious. "I need to discuss this with my husband and review these documents carefully. Can you give me 2 days? Of course. I'm staying at the hotel." That evening, Lily and Garrett pored over the contract with help from Alina's father, who had business experience. The terms were fair and straightforward. There were no hidden clauses or tricks. "This is the answer," Garrett said. "You'd keep the store and we'd still have our land. But 30% of the profits for 5 years is substantial. So is keeping your father's legacy alive." Garrett took her hand. "This is your decision, Lily. Whatever you choose, I'm with you." Lily signed the contract the next day. With Hartwell's investment, she paid off Pierce's loans with 2 days to spare. The bank manager's face when she handed him the full amount in cash was something Lily would treasure forever. "I trust everything is in order," she said sweetly. Pierce's jaw worked. "Yes, the debt is cleared." "Excellent. Then we have no further business. Good day, Mr. Pierce." With the financial pressure lifted, Lily threw herself into improving the store. She expanded the inventory to include items specifically for the growing number of families settling in the area. She started stocking books, fabric, and household goods that previously had to be ordered from Tucson. She hired a young man to make deliveries to outlying ranches, which increased sales significantly. Meanwhile, Garrett was making remarkable progress on their house. With help from Tom and other friends from the Double R, he had framed the structure and was working on the roof. Lily visited every Sunday, bringing lunch and watching their dream take shape board by board. By summer, the house was finished. It was not large, just 4 rooms and a porch, but it was solid and well built, with windows positioned to catch the breeze and a kitchen that got good morning light. The day they moved in, Garrett carried Lily over the threshold again, both of them laughing. "Welcome home, Mrs. Jenkins," he said, setting her down gently. Lily looked around at the empty rooms that would soon be filled with furniture and memories and life. "It's perfect." That autumn brought another change. Lily discovered she was pregnant. She told Garrett one evening as they sat on their porch watching the stars emerge. "I'm going to have a baby," she said simply. Garrett went very still. Then he turned to her, his gray eyes shining with emotion. "Truly, truly." He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "Our baby. Are you happy?" "Happy, Lily. I'm the luckiest man in Arizona, maybe in the whole country." The pregnancy was not easy. Lily suffered from terrible morning sickness that lasted well into her 2nd trimester, and the desert heat made her constantly uncomfortable. But Garrett was attentive and patient, bringing her cool water, rubbing her swollen feet, reading to her in the evenings when she was too tired to keep her eyes open. As her belly grew, Lily sometimes caught herself touching the scar on her face, marveling at how much her life had changed. The girl who had been told she would never find love was now a married woman expecting her first child, with a successful business and a home of her own. The transformation seemed almost miraculous. On a warm April evening in 1878, Lily went into labor. Alina and the midwife, Mrs. Patterson, attended her while Garrett paced anxiously outside. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. There were moments when Lily was certain she could not endure another contraction, but then she would hear Garrett's voice through the door, encouraging her, and she would find the strength to continue. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, a baby's cry filled the room. "It's a boy," Mrs. Patterson announced. "A healthy, strong boy." They named him Thomas after Lily's father. He had Garrett's gray eyes and a surprisingly full head of dark hair. Garrett held his son with a mixture of terror and wonder, his large, weathered hands cradling the tiny body with infinite gentleness. "He's perfect," Garrett whispered. "You're perfect. I love you both so much." Motherhood brought new challenges and new joys. Thomas was a fussy baby who did not sleep well, and Lily was exhausted most days. But Garrett was a devoted father, taking the night shift whenever he could, walking the floor with Thomas while singing old cowboy songs in his rough voice. Watching them together, Lily felt her heart might burst with love. The store continued to thrive. Lily hired a young woman named Sarah to help behind the counter, which allowed her to bring Thomas to work without neglecting customers. The baby became something of a mascot, and even Martha Simmons had to admit he was a handsome child. When Thomas was 6 months old, Lily had a visitor that surprised her. Richard Pierce walked into the store, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Mrs. Jenkins, I came to apologize," he said without preamble. "I was cruel to you and I tried to pressure you into a marriage you didn't want. I was wrong and I'm sorry." Lily studied him, searching for signs of insincerity, but he seemed genuine. "What changed your mind?" "I got married myself 3 months ago to one of the girls from St. Louis. And I realized that if she had married me only because of pressure or desperation, it would have been a miserable life for both of us. You were right to refuse me. You deserved someone who loved you for yourself, and I'm glad you found him." "Thank you, Richard. That means a great deal." They shook hands and Richard left. Lily felt as if another weight had lifted. The bitterness and anger she had carried toward those who had hurt her was finally dissolving. The years passed in a blur of work and family and quiet contentment. Thomas grew from a fussy baby into a curious toddler who wanted to explore everything. Lily and Garrett added 2 more children to their family. A daughter named Rose in 1880, who had her mother's amber, flecked eyes and sweet disposition, and another son named Jack in 1883, who inherited his father's serious nature and his mother's sharp mind. The store became one of the most successful businesses in Fort Bowie. Lily's partnership with Hartwell ended on excellent terms, and she bought out his share with profits to spare. She expanded again, adding a section for mining equipment as more prospectors moved into the region. Garrett's ranch grew as well, starting with a dozen head of cattle and eventually expanding to over 100. They were not wealthy by any standard, but they were comfortable and secure. More importantly, they were happy. The love that had started with a quiet cowboy's simple devotion had grown into something rich and lasting, tested by hardship and strengthened by time. One evening in the summer of 1889, Lily and Garrett sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. Thomas, now 11, was teaching Rose how to rope a fence post while 9-year-old Jack observed with critical eyes. The scene was so perfectly ordinary and yet so precious that Lily felt tears prick at her eyes. "What's wrong?" Garrett asked, always attuned to her moods. "Nothing's wrong. Everything is right. I was just thinking about that dance 11 years ago." Garrett smiled and took her hand. "Best night of my life, asking you to dance. The town said I'd never find love. The town was wrong about a lot of things." Garrett lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You know what I think. I think you were always going to find love, Lily. Maybe not with me, though I'm grateful every day that it was, but someone would have been smart enough to see what you're worth. I'm not sure that's true, but it's kind of you to say. It is true. But I'm still glad I was the one who got to prove the whole town wrong. Lily leaned her head on her husband's shoulder, watching the desert sun paint the sky in brilliant colors. The scar on her face had faded slightly with time, but it was still visible, a permanent reminder of the day that had changed everything. For so long, she had seen it as a curse, the thing that marked her as unlovable. But now she understood that the scar had never been the problem. The problem had been people who could not see past surfaces to the truth beneath. Garrett had seen the truth from the beginning. He had looked at her and seen not a damaged woman, but a strong, capable person worthy of love and respect. His quiet devotion had given her the courage to see herself the same way. "Thank you," Lily said softly. "For what? For proving them wrong. For loving me when everyone said no one would." Garrett turned to look at her, his gray eyes as steady and sincere as they had been that day in the store 13 years ago. "Loving you was the easiest thing I ever did, Lily Jenkins. The hard part was waiting so long to tell you." As the sun set over their land and their children's laughter filled the evening air, Lily understood that she had found something more valuable than she had ever dared to dream. Not just love, but a partnership built on mutual respect and trust. Not just a husband, but a true companion who saw her fully and loved what he saw. Not just a family, but a legacy that would outlast them both. The years continued to unfold with their mixture of challenges and blessings. In 1891, Garrett's hard work and careful management paid off when he was able to purchase additional grazing land, doubling the size of their ranch. The expansion meant more work, and Garrett hired 2 young ranch hands to help. He also started breeding horses alongside cattle, discovering he had a natural talent for it. Thomas showed an aptitude for the ranch work, often accompanying his father on long days tending the herd. Rose inherited her mother's head for business and loved helping at the store, already showing signs of the sharp merchant she would become. Jack was the scholar of the family, constantly reading every book he could get his hands on, and Lily had already begun setting aside money to send him to school in Tucson when he was older. In 1893, Fort Bowie faced a severe drought that tested every family in the area. Creeks dried up, grazing land turned brown, and many smaller ranchers lost their herds. Garrett worked tirelessly to keep their cattle alive, hauling water from the river daily and driving the herd to whatever patches of green he could find. Lily extended credit to families in need, knowing it might mean losing money but unable to turn away neighbors who were struggling. The drought broke after 18 brutal months, and while they had lost a portion of their herd, the Jenkins family emerged intact. Many of the families Lily had helped paid back what they owed, and those who could not pay in cash worked it off through labor or barter. The crisis brought the community closer together and cemented Lily's reputation as a woman of integrity. That same year, Samuel Hartwell returned to Fort Bowie. He was impressed by how much the store had grown and offered Lily an opportunity to open a second location in a growing mining town 30 miles north. "You've proven yourself an exceptional businesswoman, Mrs. Jenkins," Hartwell said. "This could be very profitable for you." Lily considered the offer carefully. The opportunity was real, but it would mean dividing her attention between 2 locations, possibly spending days away from her family. She discussed it extensively with Garrett. "It's your decision," he said. "But if you want my opinion, what we have is already good. We're doing well enough that the children will inherit security. Is more money worth the cost to our family?" Lily realized he was right. She had worked hard to build the store, but her greatest achievement was not the business. It was the life she had created with Garrett and their children. She declined Hartwell's offer politely but firmly. "I appreciate your confidence in me, Mr. Hartwell, but my priorities are here with my family." Hartwell nodded with respect. "A wise woman knows when enough is enough. I wish you continued success, Mrs. Jenkins." As the children grew older, the dynamics of the household shifted. Thomas, at 16, was nearly as tall as his father and took on increasing responsibility for the ranch. He was courting a young woman named Catherine from a neighboring ranch, and Garrett gave Lily a knowing look whenever he saw them together. "He's got it bad," Garrett said one evening. "Just like his father did. She's a lovely girl. I hope it works out for them." "Me too. Every young man deserves what we have." Rose, at 14, was beautiful and bright, with her mother's determination and her father's steady nature. She had already announced her intention to take over the store someday, and Lily had no doubt she would do it well. Jack, at 11, was still deeply immersed in books, but was beginning to show interest in the law, inspired by stories of frontier justice. In the fall of 1896, tragedy struck when Alina's husband was killed in a fall from his horse. Lily dropped everything to be with her friend, bringing food, sitting with her through the long nights of grief, helping with the practical matters that follow death. Garrett took over managing the store without complaint, proving himself as capable behind the counter as he was with cattle. "Alina's always been there for us," he said when Lily thanked him. "It's the least we can do." Watching her husband comfort their friends' children, seeing his quiet strength in the face of sorrow, Lily fell in love with Garrett all over again. After 20 years of marriage, he could still surprise her with the depth of his compassion. Alina eventually recovered, though the loss changed her. She sold most of her husband's land but kept the house and a small herd. Rose spent many afternoons helping Alina manage her reduced ranch, and Lily was proud of her daughter's kindness. As the century drew to a close, Fort Bowie itself was changing. The Army fort that had given the town its name was decommissioned in 1894, and many military families left the area. But the town did not die as some had predicted. Instead, it transformed into a thriving civilian community, sustained by ranching, mining, and commerce. Lily's store remained a central hub, and she had become something of an institution in the town. Young women starting their own businesses sought her advice. New settlers came to her for recommendations on supplies and services. Even Martha Simmons, now elderly and widowed, had mellowed and occasionally stopped by for tea and conversation. "I was wrong about you," Martha admitted one afternoon. "I thought you were reaching above your station, pursuing a man like Garrett Jenkins when you were marked as you were. But you've made a good life, better than most. I suppose I was jealous." The admission shocked Lily. "Jealous of what? You had something real." "You and Garrett, you have the kind of marriage most people only dream about, and you built it on your own terms, despite what everyone said." Martha sighed. "My marriage was arranged for business purposes. We never had what you two have." Lily reached across the table and squeezed the older woman's hand. "It's never too late to find connection with people. You're welcome here anytime, Martha." From that day on, Martha became a regular visitor, and an unlikely friendship formed between the two women. It was a reminder that people could change, that old wounds could heal. In 1899, Thomas married Catherine in a ceremony that filled the church. Garrett walked beside his son, pride evident in every line of his face. "That's my boy," he whispered to Lily as they watched Thomas pledge his vows. "Starting his own family, just like we did." A year later, Catherine gave birth to Lily and Garrett's first grandchild, a robust baby girl they named Lily Catherine. When Lily held her namesake for the first time, she was overwhelmed with emotion. A new generation, she said to Garrett as they sat together in Thomas and Catherine's small house. "Can you believe we've come this far? I always knew we would." Garrett adjusted the blanket around his granddaughter's tiny face. "We built something lasting, you and I." As the new century began, Lily found herself reflecting more and more on the journey that had brought her to this point. She was 47 years old now, with silver threading through her honey-colored hair and fine lines around her eyes. The scar on her face was still there, as permanent as ever, but she barely noticed it anymore. Neither did anyone else. It had become just another part of her face, no more significant than a freckle or dimple. One summer evening in 1902, the town held a celebration for Fort Bowie's 50th anniversary. There were speeches and music and dancing, just like that dance 26 years ago where everything had changed. Lily and Garrett attended with their children and grandchildren. 3 generations of the Jenkins family gathered together. Late in the evening, after the formal festivities had ended and people were simply enjoying the music, Garrett offered Lily his hand. "May I have this dance?" "You may always have this dance," Lily replied with a smile. They moved onto the floor, and Lily was transported back to that night so long ago when a quiet cowboy had asked her to dance and changed her life forever. They were both older now, their steps perhaps not as quick, but the connection between them was stronger than ever. "You ever regret it?" Lily asked. "Tying yourself to me when you could have had any of those pretty girls from St. Louis?" Garrett shook his head. "Not for 1 second. You were the one I wanted from the start. You're the one I'll want until my last breath. The town said I'd never find love. The town was wrong." Garrett pulled her closer. "And I'm grateful every day that I got to prove it." Around them, their children danced with their own partners. Rose was being courted by a young lawyer who had recently moved to town, a man who appreciated her sharp mind and business acumen. Jack was home from school in Tucson, already making plans to return for university. Thomas and Catherine swayed together with the ease of a young couple deeply in love, their daughter asleep in Catherine's mother's arms. This was her legacy, Lily realized. Not just the store or the ranch, but this family she and Garrett had built together. These children who had grown up knowing they were loved unconditionally, who had learned from their parents' example that true devotion was not about pretty faces or surface attractions, but about seeing and valuing the whole person. The music ended, and Garrett walked Lily back to their table. Their grandchildren clamored for stories, and Garrett launched into a tale about a wild Mustang he had broken when he was young. Lily watched him with their family gathered around, his weathered face animated with the story, and felt a contentment so deep, it was almost painful. This was what the cruel voices had said she would never have. This love, this family, this life. And yet here it was, real and solid and hers. As the evening wound down and they prepared to head home, Alina approached with a young woman in tow. "Lily, Garrett, I want you to meet my cousin's daughter, Maria. She just arrived from Mexico and is looking for work." Maria was young, perhaps 19, with a burned scar on her neck that she tried to hide with her shawl. Lily recognized the posture immediately, the way the girl angled herself to conceal the mark, the defensive set of her shoulders. "It's nice to meet you, Maria," Lily said warmly. "Do you have experience in retail?" "A little, senora. I worked in my father's shop before he died. I could use an extra pair of hands at the store. Would you be interested?" Maria's eyes lit up with hope and surprise. "Truly. But I thought," she touched her scarred neck self-consciously. "You thought wrong," Lily said gently but firmly. "If you're willing to work hard and learn, the job is yours." As Maria thanked her profusely, Lily caught Garrett's eye across the crowd. He smiled at her, that same steady smile that had first captured her heart all those years ago, and Lily knew he understood exactly what she was doing. She was paying forward the gift he had given her, the gift of being seen and valued for who she was rather than how she looked. The years continued their steady march. Rose married her lawyer in 1904, a grand ceremony that brought in relatives from across the territory. Jack graduated from university with honors and returned to Fort Bowie to practice law, quickly earning a reputation for fair dealing and integrity. Thomas and Catherine had 3 more children, and the ranch flourished under Thomas's management, eventually growing larger than even Garrett had dreamed. Maria thrived working at the store, her confidence growing as she realized that customers valued her competence and kindness. She eventually married a local rancher who loved her fiercely and never once seemed to notice her scar. In 1907, Arizona moved closer to statehood, and the territory buzzed with excitement about the changes ahead. Garrett, now 58, joked that he had lived through too many changes already. First the war, then the territories opening up, now statehood, he said, shaking his head. The world just keeps spinning faster. Are you saying you can't keep up, old man? Lily teased. I'm saying I'm right where I want to be. He pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. Don't need the world to slow down as long as I have you beside me. They were grandparents 7 times over now, with more grandchildren surely on the way. The store had been successfully transitioned to Rose's management, though Lily still worked there several days a week. Garrett had turned over most of the ranch operations to Thomas, though he still rode out every morning to check on things. They had earned their slower pace, the right to spend their evenings on the porch watching sunsets instead of working until exhaustion. One fall evening in 1910, as they sat in their usual spot with glasses of lemonade, Garrett said, "You know what I've been thinking about?" "What's that?" "That day 34 years ago when I first walked into your father's store intending to really talk to you. I was scared senseless. Thought for sure you'd laugh me right out the door. I would never have done that. I didn't know that then. All I knew was that you were the most remarkable woman I'd ever met, and if I didn't at least try, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." Lily set down her glass and took his weathered hand in hers. "I'm glad you tried. I'm glad you saw me when everyone else just saw my scar. I saw you because I was looking. Most people don't really look. They just glance at the surface and move on." Garrett squeezed her hand. "But I looked, and I saw someone strong and smart and beautiful. The scar was just part of your face, no more important than your eyes or your smile. You changed my life, Garrett Jenkins. We changed each other's lives. That's what love does." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere inside, their family was gathering for dinner, the grandchildren's voices carrying through the windows. This house that had started as a simple 4-room structure had been expanded over the years to accommodate their growing family. But the bones of it remained the same, built with Garrett's own hands. Lily thought about the girl she had been at 23, convinced she was destined for loneliness because of a scar. She wished she could go back and tell that girl what was coming. The love, the family, the success, the deep contentment of a life well lived. She would tell her that the voices saying she was unlovable were wrong, that somewhere a quiet cowboy was waiting to prove the whole town wrong with his devotion. But that girl was gone now, transformed by years and love and life into the woman Lily had become. A woman who knew her worth, who had built a legacy, who had loved and been loved in return. "Thank you," Lily said again, as she had said countless times over the decades. "For what this time?" Garrett asked with a smile. "For everything. For seeing me. For choosing me. For 34 years of proving everyone wrong." Garrett brought her hand to his lips and kissed it tenderly. "Best decision I ever made, and I'd make it again every single day. As they sat together watching the stars, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built, Lily felt a profound sense of peace. She had faced the cruelty of people who judged by appearances and the hardship of loss and struggle. She had worked hard, loved deeply, and refused to let others define her worth. And through it all, she had been blessed with a partner who saw her truly and loved her completely. The scar was still there on her face, visible when she looked in the mirror each morning. But it no longer represented rejection or loneliness. Instead, it was a reminder of where she had been and how far she had come. It was proof that what the world considered a flaw had never mattered to the one person whose opinion counted. The town had been wrong about her. They had said she would never find love, that no man would want a scarred woman. But Garrett had proven them wrong with his quiet devotion, his steady presence, and his unwavering belief in her worth. He had given her not just love but the courage to believe in herself. And in doing so, he had given her everything. The evening deepened, and eventually they went inside to join their family for dinner. Around the long table sat children and grandchildren, the legacy of a love that had defied expectations and transformed two lives. Thomas was discussing ranch business with Garrett, while Rose and Jack debated politics. The grandchildren were causing cheerful chaos at the far end of the table. Catherine and Rose's husband, Daniel, were swapping stories about their own courtships. It was noisy and crowded and chaotic, and Lily loved every moment of it. This was what true wealth looked like, not money or land or property, but people who cared about each other, who would support each other through whatever challenges lay ahead. After dinner, as the family dispersed to various activities, Garrett caught Lily's hand and led her back out to the porch. The night air was cool and pleasant, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. "One more dance?" he asked, though there was no music. "Always," Lily replied. They swayed together in the starlight, moving to a rhythm only they could hear. It was the same dance they had been dancing for 34 years, the dance of two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. Lily rested her head against Garrett's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. This was home. Not the house, not the town, but this feeling of absolute belonging. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, with exactly the person she was meant to find. The town had said she would never find love, but they had not counted on a quiet cowboy with gray eyes and a heart big enough to see past surfaces to the truth beneath. They had not understood that real love was not about perfection, but about finding someone who loved you completely, scars and all. Garrett had proven them wrong, and in doing so, he had given Lily the greatest gift imaginable: the knowledge that she was worthy of love, exactly as she was. As they danced under the stars, with their family safe inside the home they had built together, Lily knew with absolute certainty that she was the luckiest woman in Arizona, perhaps in the whole world. Because she had found what everyone searches for and many never find: a love that saw her fully, accepted her completely, and chose her every single day. The quiet cowboy had proved the whole town wrong with his devotion. And in doing so, he had given Lily something more precious than she ever could have imagined: a life filled with love, purpose, and the profound peace that comes from being truly known and truly cherished. That was the story they would tell their great-grandchildren someday. The story of how love had triumphed over cruelty, how devotion had overcome judgment, and how two people had built a legacy that would outlast them both. It was a story worth telling, a story worth living, and it was their story, beginning to end, exactly as it was always meant to be.